to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
All right, my next guest really needs no introduction. She is a global Golden Globes nominee, an Oscars nominee, and a BAFTA nominee. She comes from a legendary name that nearly everyone knows as ubiquitous. And she is making movies now that are encouraging people on a whole different level. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome Mariel Hemingway.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry if my dog was whining and said, I want to be in your lap. So
It's quite all right. We take friends of all stripes around here. What's the dog's name?
Daisy.
All right, Daisy. I hope she feels welcome. Let's talk about for my audience, Mariel. We don't get to talk to a lot of people that have a legacy in the entire performing arts world like you do. And obviously, your grandfather was a phenomenal writer, and people know him around the world. But you really have had an entire life of people that have been in the spotlight. And I'm just curious, when you were little Mariel growing up, did you think that life was going to be the way it has turned out for you?
Oh my gosh. I think when you're small, when you're growing, I grew up in Sun Valley, Idaho, Ketchum, Idaho. I think you never think that you're going to make it all the way to 60. That just seemed like, I don't know.
Well, someday maybe you'll still get there. Well, we're just saying.
You're so kind. Yes, maybe someday. But, the truth is I don't feel that way. But as a child, I really didn't think much about it. I grew up in this famous family. My grandfather was probably one of the most famous writers of the 20th century. And that was kind of a part of my existence. But I also lived in a small town. So it was partially part of my life. And then I went to Hollywood because my sister was playing in a movie and she invited me to play her little sister. And then I would go to LA and then I would go back to Idaho and kind of live this very small town life. So there was a balance to that probably kept me very sane and also kept me from worrying or thinking that my name was bigger than me and scary for me, although I could see that it had a tremendous effect on my father. Being the son of Ernest Hemingway and then deciding that you want to be a writer is an interesting choice.
Well, I was going to ask you, how old were you when you first really understood what being Ernest Hemingway's granddaughter was all about?
Well, I knew that he was famous, but it wasn't. I was actually on a chairlift because I grew up Sun Valley is a ski resort and all you did was ski when you were in school. I was on a chairlift and somebody, and I, you have a partner on the chairlift and I think I was 10 years old and they looked at me and they were like, they were talking like I was some cute girl. In a good way, not in a weird way.
Well, I get it. Go ahead.
And it's like, whoa, I got to be careful. What I said. But anyway, he said, what's your name? And I said, my name's Mariel Hemingway. And he just stopped for seconds. I was like, are you okay? He's like, oh my gosh, Ernest Hemingway, he's amazing. He's one of my heroes and all this stuff. And I remember going home and asking my father, why would somebody be so nervous and all of a sudden, and then my father sort of explained. The following year when I was 11, my father took me to Paris and showed me the different places that he grew up. He grew up in Paris. He spent the first 10 years of his life in Paris, France. And he showed me that. So that was a very privileged thing to be able to do at 11 years old. So I started to really understand and have this. I remember reading The Old Man and the Sea and thinking that I had some special connection to my grandfather because he died before I was born.
Right.
So.
I was going to ask you because he did die before you were born. And you wrote in one of your books about the phenomenon of being a young girl in the acting business that got hit on by some of the older guys. And I'm just curious, in 2023, as you sit here right now, still only 30 something years old, what are you thinking about where the industry is in terms of its treatment of women and how women have progressed through even the scandals of the last few years to come out the other side? Are we at a better place than we were before the Me Too scandal, or do you think there's room to grow?
There's always room to get better at anything. You know, when I was in the business early on, I was very young, and there were these things that were going on kind of behind the scenes. They talk about the producer's couch or whatever,
Right.
whatever that was. And it was a very real thing. It never, I guess I was just that girl. Either I was protected by God or something, but I was like, I never allowed that to be my issue. I'm not saying people didn't hit on me or whatever, but it was like, I don't know, something protected me. But that being said, the business is a tough business, and it's been very tough on women and men. Frankly, you know, people get hit on, men get hit on, and there's weird things that go on in the business. Like, and I don't know why, you know, maybe the entertainment business sort of draws on this, like there's some sort of invitation that it's okay because it's the entertainment, we're creatives and we're artists. And I think we've come a long way. I think the Me Too movement was an important movement for women to stand up and say no more, you know, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. And so, but there's always room for improvement, but there's room for improvement on many levels. It's not just the entertainment industry. It's like, you know, you go into big corporations and people are doing inappropriate things. It's a challenging time. It's just a different time because now we've got so many rules around.
Well, you were just talking about not being able to say something was, you know, pretty or attractive or not. And I find myself apologizing now when I say, you look very nice. Am I allowed to say that? You look very nice tonight. I just wanted to let you know. But I grew up in an age of chivalry where all of the men in my family we're always very respectful and complimentary to the women in our lives. And so it's just something that as a Southerner, I was just kind of born in me. But even to this day, I find myself, you know, hitting the brakes. Am I allowed to say that?
I know. I feel kind of the same. I kind of feel like we're in a time where you can't even express opinions without you being in a camp. Now, all of a sudden, said that you believe something, whatever it is, and then you're in that camp. I'm like, wait, no, I was actually trying to have a conversation. I'm curious what you think and what do you think about this. But you can't have conversations anymore. My heart goes out to comedians nowadays because you can't make fun of
No, you can't make fun of anything. It's done. She's Mariel Hemingway. We're coming right back. Kevin McCullough, so glad to have you with us. Stay here.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin.